how can different foods, how can different lifestyle contribute to reducing these contaminants, and how, as we tend to say, how can we maximize nutrition and minimize toxic risk for populations to be healthier, both the Inuits and throughout the world. So I think that we owe, researchers who look at the relationship between environment and health, as we owe a great debt to, I think, Fernando Branches, who likewise died very young. We owe a debt to Eric de Wiley, who made an incredible contribution, and happily in his group there are a lot of young researchers who will continue on in the same spirit that he worked, and will continue on with the research with the Inuit and other northern and southern populations. Which brings me to introducing Minnie Gray. Minnie Gray has worked throughout her career to improve the quality of life for the Inuit in Nunavik, and in Canada and internationally. She is from Nunavik, and she has worked, you have it in your booklet, she has worked in so many capacities in order as a representative of the Inuit people, both locally, nationally, and internationally. I would like to invite her to talk to us. I knew her, indeed, I met her last week when she gave the most moving memoriam at Eric de Wiley's memorial service, and I am sure that she will share, and today we are asking her to share her thoughts with us as an introduction to this, as a keynote speaker for this Eco Health 2014.
Thank you very much for having me here. I'm very proud to be asked to speak to you. But at one point, I thought, am I okay? Yes. All right. Okay. This is, I've been, thinking about this talk for the last couple of days. I first got the invitation a few months ago, but I have this nasty habit of procrastinating. So it took me a while, but I do thank you for inviting me. Inuptitu uhagay na lang ngayong uhaw sila na ito kasang wakisiya nakakita kayo siya na so mat. Did I forget to ask for interpretation? No, that's just always my way to start my talks because I don't know, so many years I've been doing this and I still always get the butterflies in my stomach. And when I speak my language, Inuktitut, it's my way of calming myself down and to all make you nervous instead. Really, but in order to keep healthy, I think I have to stop doing these talks because I could have a heart attack from my nerves. Anyways, I thank you again. But I am a bit intimidated by the subject of this conference because I'm not a scientist and I'm not a researcher. So I couldn't even begin to wonder about what eco-health means from that point of view, from the scientific and the researcher's view. I just came off the land on Sunday. I and a bunch of friends, my husband and friends, went off on their boat and went down the river in Cujo Kuujjuaq, and went on the land and picked some berries gathered off the land, and gave some back to the land, some of my blood to the black flies. So to me, because I have lived all my life, not all my life, I mind you, but I am an Inuk who was raised on the land when my people were still practicing their traditions on a daily basis. Now, a little over 50 years later, I'm now in the age of technology and modern life, of which my grandmother or my mother never saw or lived through. So sometimes I feel like a split personality. As I said, I was on the land practicing my tradition a few days ago, and here I am sitting in front of all of you, using a computer and talking about eco-health. I'm sure that during this conference we will hear a lot about theory and the buzzwords regarding eco-health, ecosystem health. So I'd like to take this time to share a little bit about my own experience, to give another perspective of how the environment and the ecosystem ties in and links very closely to the Inuit health and way of life. You know, the interaction between the community and the interaction between the community, the environment, and health is really very natural. So when I first got involved in research related to contaminants in the Arctic food chain 22 years ago, it was with the late Dr. Eric Dwight. And it took some work to understand the scientific aspects, but I learned that translating the science to language that can be understood by the Inuit was key. That time in 1992, I had no idea what PCB was. We heard a lot about PCB, mercury, high levels of all that in our blood, in our breast milk, but so what does that do to us? What does that do to me when I want to eat my seal fat, when I eat my food, when I want to eat my muktuk, my whale meat, and all those other special marine mammal fats that are good for me? So we struggled even with the language of contaminants. How do you say PCB in Inuktitut? How do you say mercury in Inuktitut? How are you going to educate the Inuit about the most important thing that is happening in their life without creating panic? So this was the challenge when I first met Dr. Doyle. I was the new executive director of the Kuujjuaq Hospital at the time. I had a newborn baby, I was on maternity leave, I was breastfeeding, and Eric and his team came to Kuujjuaq after he had discovered the high levels of PCB. But him and his team came and requested a meeting with me. I was on maternity leave, so I was not all keen to do that, but I did meet them. And that's when this whole new world of learning about contaminants and how it has impacted my wildlife, my diet, became something that I wanted to learn more about, and I soon became very passionate about the issues, and I became part of Eric's team, not as a scientist or a researcher, but in his words, as an Inuk leader, taking on the responsibility of research that will teach me how to make informed decisions. So from there, we worked a lot on trying to interpret what is it, and how to interpret all that into language that Inuit will understand, and also to make the Inuit understand where does it come from. Where does it come from? So it was all an education, and we still didn't figure out what words to use for these PCBs and mercury, so we called them harmful substances in our language. But then the normal everyday, will now just say PCB, mercury, So I, to calm all the confusion and the panic at the time, we developed a working committee between the scientists and people like myself and local leaders, and we called it the PCB committee. And a few months later, that's when I met Eric. He started to be very concerned about, we don't want to scare people. Why are we making the committee focus so much on the contaminant PCB? So after our meetings, we decided, okay, let's change it. Let's call it the Food and Contaminants Committee. And then we'll start to educate people around foods and the contaminants, the importance of food, and how to balance that. And a few months later, we all just got back together again and said, we're focusing again on the contaminants. So we named this committee 3 times. Today, it is now called the Nunavut Nutrition and Health Committee, and it still exists today. Today, this committee is a leader in identifying which research will be done in our region. They identify areas of where we want to learn more about the contamination and the benefits of food, and how to make our population, communities, and our region, even individuals, make better informed decisions. So I naturally just became a voice of this committee, and I took the language of the science and brought it to the language of the Inuit. So what a challenge that was. So that's just a glimpse of where I became involved. So as I said, if we're to make informed decisions about our health, we needed research. But we had to be participating partners in this research, because far too long we were the subjects of research without ever having a say. Researchers came and went, leaving with their information, and that was never shared with us. It just became a paper where all the scientists and researchers that elsewhere in the world would be able to read it. Today, the days of researchers flying in and out are gone. We're here as leaders of research. One of the stories or the experience I'd like to share with you also is that in 1993, following the development of the creation of the committee, I then got involved again in the Eastern Arctic Eco-Research Project as a steering committee member, as an advisor to Eric and his team again. We called the project Avativut Ilusivut. Avativut Ilusivut means our environment, our health. And the objective of this research was to document the effects of exposure to environmental contaminants in Nunavut and Labrador. So we partnered with people in Labrador. Once again, the questions: how do these contaminants affect the human health? especially the impacts they may have on the quality of life of the Inuit. The other objective was to develop a risk management framework in collaboration directly with Inuit. We found that the risk management research project helped enhance the decision-making capacity of the regional and community organizations so they themselves can deal effectively with the many aspects of contaminants exposure, effects, and impacts. We held workshops in Coudjoua, Quebec, and Lane, Labrador in January of 1995, and these workshops were organized to better understand the community and regional perspectives on contaminant issues, and to involve the Inuit themselves and the organizations in planning and process of the various sub-projects of the eco-research. These workshops brought together the principal investigator at the time, Eric, and researchers from the sub-projects, whom were many of his students, the steering committee, of which I was involved, field coordinators, and key members of the community. The communities of Nunavik and Labrador participated, and these workshops were very successful because they provided for active discussion in which Inuit expressed their concerns, perspectives, and needs in relation to local and regional environmental contaminant issues. Inuit questioned and made comments concerning these projects. Concerns were raised on how to better understand what contaminants can do to the health of Inuit and wildlife. How are the animals being affected? More particularly, one of the main foods of Inuit is the caribou, land animal. How is that animal being affected? And what is the benefit of eating our country food? And what are the risks of eating store-bought food, as we saw? The importance of culturally appropriate communication regarding the research and the results was voiced very loudly at that time. So stemming from these exchanges, shortcomings in the scope and the conception of the research programs were identified. And these limitations that were identified included the absence of study on the caribou health and the narrow focus on the risk of country food diet without the consideration of the benefits. Knowing these allowed for subsequent adaptation to the research program. So a caribou study was done, and studies assessing Inuit perception of risk of country food diets was broadened to determine cultural, social, economic, and health benefits. So following all these steps, the project also focused on the development of a risk communication document. This document, entitled Country Foods, Benefits and Risks, a resource guide for Nunavik and Labrador, which you can all Google and find, assisted decision makers at the regional, community, and individual levels by establishing a framework and a system for organizing information resulting from the numerous studies on contaminant risks and benefits. In order to ensure the success and relevance to the community needs, the final structure of the organization and the content of this document was determined by Inuit partners in Nunavik and Labrador. So, I use this particular research project as an example to show the importance of including people impacted by research, to use their knowledge to enhance the scientific aspects of such research. Without the participation of the community decision makers, the direction of the research is one-sided, and there is no transfer of knowledge to the individuals and those that are most affected. And we all know that it is now understood that research done with an ecological approach shows that the social environment of the community affects the population health. Such studies have focused on the extent to which social issues, social relations, and economies and vitality of the community influence health status. The Inuit community remains adaptable and very resilient. We have endured drastic, rapid change, but we continue to be strong and survive much like our ancestors did in the harsh climate they lived in. But we are enduring yet another change, and that is climate change and the impacts that it is having on our livelihood. Flooding and erosion or warming temperatures all have an impact on the community and the population. The shift in local access and availability and the links between these changes in the physical environment and individual health are very clear. I stand here talking about the importance of environment and health because we're very linked to it. My everyday preoccupation, I'm afraid, lies in different areas. I am, as the Executive Director of the Regional Board of Health and Social Services in Nunavik, very much preoccupied with the social challenges that my people face. We are faced with the very hard issues of the rapid changes that have impacted our life. We are dealing with alcohol and drug abuse. We're dealing with violence. We're dealing with unnecessary death due to violence. We are facing hardship when it comes to the well-being of children. So my environment and my health is important, but without addressing these big challenges, we will not get to our health as our environment is meant to be. Because we saw already the environment impacts our health. And in our communities, these big social challenges that face us is an environment that will lead to bad health. So I just wanted to share a little bit of that part. As I say, I'm a split personality. I would like to now shift a little bit to show how Inuit at the international level are looking to use research and develop strategies to improve the health and well-being of its people. The Inuit Circumpolar Council created the Inuit Health Steering Committee, which includes members from Russia, Alaska, Greenland, and Canada. And I'm honored to presently be the chair of this committee. And in our working together, we've discovered that Inuit in all 4 countries have many, many common issues and concerns regarding health, not only in the environment and health, human health aspect, but also in the areas I just touched upon, the challenges that are facing our people as far as social issues and other problems, mental health. So the committee developed the Circumpolar Health Strategy, which was presented to the ICC General Assembly in 2010. And the overall objective of this strategy is to improve Inuit health and wellness across the Arctic. We identified 5 main goals in this strategy, which were to, number 1, Number 1 was to influence international, regional, and national policies and programs that impact on Inuit health and well-being. 2 was to improve awareness of Inuit health and wellness across the Arctic. 3, encourage greater focus on Inuit health and wellness through the Inuit Circumpolar Council's representation at the international fora. And to support improved understanding by her health professionals of the Arctic Inuit-specific needs. And finally, to promote research to improve Inuit health and wellness. In the 4 years of implementing these goals, ICC was very active in a number of campaigns and advocacy related to health issues outlined in its strategy. The first goal, ICC advocated for the Minimata Convention on Mercury, which was adopted in 2013. It also supported work for the addition of several new harmful chemicals to the Stockholm Convention on persistent organic pollutants. It also addressed the effects of resource development on Inuit health through the Declaration on Resource Development Principles. For the second goal, ICC Canada and the steering committee produced a number of reports, most notably Health Systems Serving Inuit Communities Across the Arctic in 2011, Circumpolar Inuit Health Priorities, Best Health Practices and Research, and Food Security Across the Arctic in 2012. And these reports are available on the ICC website. One of the notable achievements in our work was the creation of the community-based monitoring in a changing Arctic. It's a website atlas, that web atlas that can be also used to show best practices in health. For the third goal, ICC presented its perspectives on health and well-being issues through active participation in a number of Arctic Council working groups and committees on topics such as environmental monitoring, marine shipping, sustainable development, and human health. As well, ICC is currently the Indigenous co-chair for the Arctic Council's Arctic Human Health Expert Group during the Canadian chairmanship of the Arctic Council. And it has also participated and delivered interventions at the United Nations meetings on health-related issues. On the fourth goal, many reports and presentations already mentioned support this goal. More specifically, the web atlas will be an important platform to show Inuit mental wellness initiatives as well as many health practices, best health practices. These can be continually added onto and promoted through presentations and meetings. The ICC has also reached health professionals through published articles in the peer-reviewed International Journal of Circumpolar Health and a case study on the right to food security for the Hunger, Nutrition and Climate Justice Conference in Dublin, Ireland in 2013. Finally, the fifth goal is around the issue of research, which ICC is involved in promoting in research that has the potential to improve Inuit health and wellness by participating in the first International Polar Year, ArcticNet program in Canada, International Union for Circumpolar Health, Arctic Council Health Expert Group, and as co-lead on projects such as best practices in mental wellness and resilience to address suicide and cancer among circumpolar Indigenous peoples. And finally, we are also involved in the Northern Contaminants Program Management Committee. I believe that ICC as a voice to the Inuit in the circumpolar region has been very successful in raising the profile of these issues internationally. Of course, there's much more to be done in advocating better health outcomes for Inuit. The Circumpolar Health Steering Committee maintains that the health priorities previously identified in the 2010-14 strategy remain unchanged. However, mental health, housing, education and training, service delivery and youth should be the areas of focus over the next 4 years. We have further recommended that ICC continue building knowledge of Inuit health and well-being issues, and to advocate these issues through relevant bodies and processes. And to continue to advance Inuit health and well-being by reviewing the progress of the 2010-14 Circumpolar Inuit Health Strategy, and to continue identifying emerging health issues and gaps, promoting strategic initiatives through the development of the 2014-18 implementation plan for Inuit Nunat in partnership with national circumpolar international partners. As Inuit, we've been very concerned about what is happening in our world. Our culture goes hand in hand with our health. In Nunavik, we've been very fortunate to be able to lead many of the fine health research that has been done. Our research has been able to help us to give public health advisory to people that are considered high risk of being impacted by the contaminants. To name a few, we have worked very closely to childbearing women to eat more char, less marine mammal fats. We've had hunters ban lead shots to avoid lead poisoning in our infants. In our infant development studies, anemia was discovered to be very high. We have partnered with the daycare systems to ensure that country food and the recipes are developed. We continue on with all kinds of little research, but we consider these important. We did a little survey on the use of and the availability of trans fats in our communities, and once again, this is one of Eric's big brainstorms where we dreamt of influencing government policy to not allow trans fats to be sold in our stores anymore. We'll get there. Today we also had the Blue Tongue Project, where we are taking berries off our land and working with students to make products that can be, eaten in school, hopefully one day, because the berries are good for us. In 2004, we embarked on a major project called Hanuipita. Hanuipita is, how are we? Eric always came to me and said, how shall we name this in Inuktitut? So he called me up one day and said, Minnie, how are we? How do you say that in Inuktitut? So I said, Hanuipita. Good, that's the name of our project. Hanuipita. We took a ship to each and every community of Nunavik. 14 communities. And we did research. Many people were able to be seen by specialists after this research, especially women who for the first time received mammograms. Everything was done, there was a lab, you name it. That Hanuipita research was, Inuit Health Survey was a very useful tool for also our public health and medical services to improve. Diabetes is on the rise, as Eric used to say. Inuit are on the last train of the diabetes train. and we are. And we continue to plan a new Inuit health survey, Hanui Pita 2. We've had to take some steps back to regroup. Main leader was Eric, so we will continue to work hard to continue this second phase of Hanui Pita. We have been working very closely with Greenland, Alaska, and Canada on the Inuit cohort study to better understand our environment and our foods and its impacts. I don't want to keep much of your time anymore. I usually try to keep my talks short, but for some reason I'm blabbering now. I hope really I have been able to shed a bit of light into the very complex issues that Inuit have to deal with in the area of health. Our environment, our ecosystem is our healthy base. With the climate change and impending development in the Arctic regions, we've every right to be concerned about these issues. Our food comes from the land and the sea. The seal, which gives us nutrition from its blood. The berries which we gather, our drinking water. We cannot afford to sever the intimate link between health, the land, and the sea. I want to leave here by giving some points to help some young researchers who want to work in the Arctic. In the words of Dr. DeWiley, which resonate very loudly, open your eyes, your ears, your heart. Take the time. Don't expect to just receive, but think about giving. Giving something back. So I'll end my presentation, and I have to say that I have been very privileged to have been involved all these years, and we need more research. But this research needs to be done with our participation. This research needs to be done with a heart. Nako, may Malayalam.